Oh, the places we'll go today. Sorry, I could not travel both, and be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. For Robert Frost's poem, I suppose the imagery most people have is the happy inner journey, akin to the mythologist Joseph Campbell's hero's journey vision that he had. The name itself, hero's journey, implies success, doesn't it? Else it would simply have been called a journey, or more ominously, dead end. Forks in the journey of life are many, and the paths don't always lead into bucolic woods, as we see now. Sometimes they lead into forests, dark and deep and foreboding. I'm sorry, it got stuck for a second. One ventures into the unknown, into the ambiguities. The uncertainties of life can swallow us. And during such moments, courage seems to fail us, even though fear has left us long, long ago. These moments catapults one into realms of resignation. One then discerns the real meaning of the adage, keep calm, carry on. It is the description of resignation, isn't it? This keep calm, carry on. Keep calm, it advises. When panic boils over, carry on, it guides, because that is the only remaining choice for survival. The person on such a crossroad of life penetrates the feeling of being in the moment. That is largely due to the fact that the future seems unfathomably monotonous. When at this juncture of life, one really comprehends Hamlet's acceptance of devastation. His famous soliloquy, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. These moments of life are both the invoice and reward of the proverbial hero's journey. This is when the debt for daring to step into the unknown unprepared is paid. That person at that moment, more than anyone else in the world, understands the gift, the blessing of traveling down charted roads that have been paved by humanity, roads that others have walked down for ages, because that's what paved roads are, aren't they? They embody humanity, planned and paved collectively by others, throbbing with humanity. It's mere existence shouting exuberantly, you are not alone. That at the forks of life, one need not go it alone. To know that another is there, even if in spirit, having your back, loving you. If you're lucky, you have a fellow traveler. And if you've earned your blessings in this paved road of life, you get to find yourself. The beauty is to travel down the pathways of tradition with the prism of your own perspectives, to appreciate things that others may not have the capacity to behold, to perhaps realize that millennia was spent silently, lovingly, creating this into existence. In our ignorance, we dismiss it by pejoratively calling it a weed. I hope that my perspectives are colored by empathy so that my sorrows expand me into consciousness and that I recognize that my life has been paved by countless acts of kindness by strangers. That along with the bumps and potholes, The road of life was paved with joy, and that same road also held grief, loss. The loss could be the end of a relationship, loss of a beloved friendship. The endlessness of such absences can drown us. But knowing others have walked this path, simply keep going, one foot in front of the other. Keep walking, step by step, wherever you are, whoever you are. I will take this inner journey and pave my way to you, the person I am meant to become. A very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for sharing your afternoon with us. The Nourishment Projects is about joyous curiosity and being part of something much larger than ourselves. Here are some of the references that inform this presentation. The two aspects of the narrative for Paved are very dear to me. Roads represent humanity, and how and where these roads are built affect ecology. So environment, biodiversity has the effect of religion on me. Humanity, for this narrative today, is broken into two categories, spiritual and material. So in other words, the two categories are effectively monks and merchants. So street vendors from old world China are principally no different from those in Paris now. Regardless of the opulence, these are still street front sellers, merchants peddling goods with mere superficial differences from those Chinese merchants we just saw. Roads have long documented the celebrations of humanity. In this case, Victory Day 1945, celebrating the end of World War I. Roads are the theater for challenges as well. In this photograph, thousands of women, I'm going to point to them right there, marching for our voting rights, are surrounded by a much, much larger hostile crowd. Voting is a privilege one should never take for granted. And so those brave women paved that freedom for me and for countless others. Roads bear beauty. To cruise through atmospheric Cuba in a vintage Chevrolet is rather, I don't know, charming. Roads also frustrate. Traffic jam that can snarl one for hours. Roads are also the pathways of gods. This is a photograph of hundreds of people pulling a chariot celebrating New Year's in Nepal. So Nepal is a Hindu country. One of the Hindu gods, Jagannath, is pulled annually on a massive chariot. So Jagannath was pronounced by the British as Juggernaut. That's the etymology of the word, which means an overwhelming force coming towards you, as this chariot represents. So that's the word Juggernaut. Roads also include paths that are yet unpaved, and such paths witness human atrocities, those of the past. Roads continue witnessing atrocities of the present, and unfortunately, will continue witnessing what is predicted to be an onslaught of climate refugees the world over. Shown here are climate refugees forced to leave their homeland due to the drought in the Horn of Africa region. Roads also introduce us to beguiling figures of history, adventurous souls like Ella Mayart, who had traveled and documented the world even before World War I in a Ford motor car. People like her opened up the beauty of the unknown, stunners like this from Isfahan, to a larger world. Walk down charted paths others have traveled for centuries. Walk the route of Roman soldiers by Hadrian's Wall, which has been around for 1900 years. This aspect of walking brings to mind the connection between roads and religion. The realm of monks, more than merchants, though there are historical overlaps, because pilgrimages happen everywhere in the world. Shown here is Peru's Gogliarici festival, which is the Snow Star Festival. It is a 4-day celebration honoring both Jesus Christ as well as the area's glacier, which is considered sacred by the indigenous people. Traditionally held in late May or early June, the pilgrimage mingles Roman Catholic and indigenous beliefs. And mountain pilgrimages are found in opposite hemispheres as well. This is Japan's Mount Fuji. Entire religions are born in the foothills of mountains, aren't they? Because mountains have such an easy geographic association with ascendancy. The climb skyward to meet the constellations is metaphorically linked to our own inner transcendence. Walking to view sacred objects and to experience an epiphany is found in almost all religions. Pilgrimages endure as a powerful testimony to devotion. So Camino de Compostela in Spain, though mainly a Christian tradition, now includes any walkers of unshakable faith, independent of which divinity's sandals or bare feet one chooses to metaphorically step into. Though this presentation is not about pilgrimages of individual faiths, one must mention the largest gathering of humanity, which occurs every 12 years in India, in Allahabad, now known as Prayagraj, a place of potent cosmic significance to Hindus. More than 100 million devotees walk. They arrive to immerse themselves in the Ganges River to purify themselves. So pilgrimage, effectively to walk the talk of religion, is an intense vision of our inner and outer world. Gary, I'm glad I pointed out your dog. Spell dog backwards. Who better than this noble creature to behold what is true devotion and an unbounded love of walking? So pilgrimages are not the focus for today either. This narrative is also not an introductory essay on geology and building materials, be they cobblestones or wooden roads, an example of which is literally in the backyard of those who live in the Streeterville Gold Coast area of Chicago. There are many of you in the audience today. This wooden paved road is in the back of the Cardinal's house, and it's truly all wood. One can see the rings. Most roads now are asphalt or concrete. This is not, again, a material science presentation. It is about the humanity that the roads represent. And one of the most famous roads is the proverbial Silk Roads, extant for almost 2,000 years. The Silk Roads were trade networks, merchants and monks, because religion propagated down these pathways as well. A material example of trade is the flower, the tulip. So tulips are an undeniable product of the Silk Roads. They're originally from the Tian Shan mountain areas, currently, which is Kazakhstan, so I'm pointing here, they come from this area, Tian Shan. Centuries ago, merchant caravans traveled down these paths, and perhaps some of them gathered these tulips, just as you and I may pick flowers to add beauty to a long journey. And so the seeds were dispersed. Eventually, these flowers landed up and captivated the Dutch. I'm going to point to the map. Look how far down west these flowers traveled, because Holland is even further west, way off this map. The Dutch tulip vases owe even a lot more to the Far East, the least of which is the signature white and blue of Delftware, a very recognizable ceramic associated with Netherlands. The white and blue was made as a facsimile of the blue and white Ming porcelain that the Dutch grew to crave as they started trading for tea. So ironically, the Ming, and by Ming I mean read Chinese designs, the Ming white and blue owes its genesis to the Islamic areas of now Afghanistan and Pakistan, because the Chinese used to call this blue Mohammedan blue, because the blue came from cobalt that were mined in the areas farther west of China. Again, from areas of Afghanistan, Pakistan, all those areas. Messainak, places now that are still, you can see the remnants of the cobalt trades. And this cobalt, as you can guess, traveled to China via the Silk Roads. So those luxury supplying roads of human history. But even before the Silk Roads, there was the Royal Persian Road, which is also called the Royal Roads, from about 500 BCE, BCE being before current era. And so this is about 2,600 years ago from now. The Royal Road connected Susa, which is in present-day southwest Iran, to Sardis, which is present-day Turkey. And I've marked these with the red arrows on the map. So this happened during the Persian Empire, which at its height encompassed the areas of modern-day Iran, Egypt, Turkey, and parts of Afghanistan and Pakistan. The trip from Susa to Sardis would take about 2 months to complete by foot. But with a healthy and a very fast horse, a traveler could go from one end to the other in 7 to 9 days. And so the Royal Road was developed with the purpose of allowing swift travel from one city to another, for information to be passed through all cities of Persia so that the king's decrees could be sent to the farthest corners of the empire. Checkpoints were set up to ensure safety and for travelers to have rest stops known as caravanserais, where they could rent horses or acquire supplies as needed. Another historically famous road closer to our times is the Grand Trunk Road of India. So about 100 years ago, India included areas now known as Pakistan. But these trade routes were originally established during the Maurya Empire, which is about 2,400 years ago, around 300 BCE, BCE again before current era. And so these trade routes ran from the mouth of the Ganges, near what is now Kolkata, which is my birthplace, through to Kabul, Afghanistan. It's obviously marked in red. So the Mughals, which were the Muslim invaders of India, valued these trade routes and had upgraded the Kolkata-Kabul route all the way into what is now Bangladesh. When the British ruled India, they branded this trade route the Grand Trunk Road and improved the infrastructure. It exists still. The cacophony of Indian roads is matched by their visual stimulation. No wonder we Indians meditate. It is the only way to stay calm in this perpetual chaotic motion. The Indian roads are shared with all sentient beings. As one travels away from the city, one encounters the predominant merchant vehicles, the ubiquitous Indian truck known as the lorry. So the individualized decorations distinguish each truck on the road. And it is a small luxury for the drivers who might otherwise become faceless in a sea of 7 million cargo vehicle operators. The vibrant decorations are a rebuttal to the monotony and isolation of truck driving. And they certainly announce themselves. Those of you who have been here, I'm sure can just remember almost cringeworthy honking of these trucks. And truly, spelling is not their forte. I love this. No girlfriend, no tension. Yup. Keep writing. The maintenance infrastructure is barely existent in India. So when mishaps occur, which they do frequently, the proverbial Oriental languor is rather helpful, because this is of the firm belief, eventually help will arrive. So take life as it comes. Take it easy. It's this Grand Trunk Road that Rudyard Kipling called the river of life, teeming with humanity. That boy could very well be Kipling's lovable rascal, Kim. Vibrant and alive, the Grand Trunk Road welcomes all, even today. The boy and his donkey of timeless India, along with modern day vehicles, and it extends into Pakistan and Bangladesh. And just as the Grand Trunk Road of the Indian subcontinent commenced in my birthplace, Kolkata, the United States Mother Route, Route 66, commences near my beloved city, Chicago, because it travels from Illinois to California, allowing one to experience Americana. So my husband and I, along with our dog, had traveled down these roads quite many times. Trips on the smooth, amiable Midwest roads are very pleasant and atmospheric. And over the rim of the harsh corn, one sometimes spies a stern El Greco horizon with only the cumulus part of the pregnant clouds conspicuous against the neutral swoon of the background. At other times, beyond the tilled plains, one beholds a slow infusion of inutile loveliness. The Midwest open skies allows one to see the low sun in a platinum haze with a warm peeled peach tinge pervading the upper edges of that dove gray cloud fused with the distant amorous mist. It's complete poetry in motion. I don't know why they bemoan the Midwest. And on the ground, one experiences Americana. The roadside staple restaurant, Cracker Barrel, I love that place. They have the greatest biscuits, just doused in honey and butter. As one drives by, the singularities of each place is far from kitschy, although that's the term a lot of people use, anything but. Just as those individual Indian trucks, the lorries, reflected the individual driver, these mom and pop creations, I feel, lend the place history. And one may justifiably call this 66 feet high structure an art installation. And I always wonder, perhaps this restaurant, The Rooster, has bourbon maple fried chicken on the menu. Get everything in Texas. And I absolutely love this. So here's a bit of useless information for you. Growing up in Kolkata, American bands such as The Doors, The Eagles, and even singers like John Denver and Kenny Rogers were familiar territories for me because I have more than 27 first cousins. They're all older, and all my male cousins listen to all that music. So I know the lyrics to almost every song by the Eagles. And so when I saw this sign standing on the corner in Winslow, Arizona, that was such a fine sight for me to see. And I started singing that song. And I distinctly remember my husband, Uncle, looking at me sideways and my dog almost howling in protest. I think she was snarling, "Take it easy, Nightingale, stop singing." But you know, it's fun. I really, really love road trips. And the Route 66 does take one through Arizona all the way into California. And the roads there, Big Sur shown here, part of Highway 1, are paved, or more aptly, framed in beauty. America the Beautiful is truly best seen by road. The barren landscape of summer Colorado, the verdancy of the East Coast, the sheer majesty of the Tetons are best experienced on either horseback or by car, not by flying over them. There's also a hypnotic allure of these snaky, winding paths in the flatlands of Oklahoma and the equally bewitching sky roads of Wyoming, which are an alternate to the I-80 that cuts through the continental United States. If you happen to drive down this highway, do look up. There's a reason it's called Sky Roads. And again, on the East Coast, drive through the ribbons of light to a cafe near Shenandoah National Park, where blackberry pie is crowned with decadent ice cream. You see, such things are the rewards of road trips, not flyover airplane travel. You will not get them. So one can strum through Nashville in a car and experience 9th century architecture of New Mexico. People have been driving to these areas for a long time, even before Google Maps. In fact, drivers from decades ago probably experienced these places much more vividly because they prepared diligently for these trips. Back then, family vacations weren't last-minute affairs. Road trips had to be meticulously planned. Nowadays, we associate the Blue Book simply for car value, but that's not its original meaning. So, side note, another odd fact I discovered, I'm happy to share with you. The Geico insurance advertisement one constantly sees, that green gecko mascot. Geico is an acronym for Government Employee Insurance Company, GEICO, because they initially provided insurance for government workers and then later expanded to include everyone. So Geico is an acronym. It doesn't fit into the story, but it was so weird. I just thought I'll let you know, because I think you guys enjoy facts like that. So back to the roads. It are these blue books more what provided updated maps for those who wanted to travel. And they included detailed directions, where to turn right, turn left, go further, go this way, which is what is now effectively given to us by Google Maps or Waze, whichever app you choose to use. But the Blue Book also included advertisements because originally automobiles were a sign of wealth. So yes, indeed, have wool robes and shawls exclusively for your cars. Isn't it mind-boggling? Surveyors and engineers drove all over the United States to create and update these books. They recorded their survey findings and transferred it onto transparent sheets, which were overlaid on previous maps. The amount of people and effort involved in creating maps and guidebooks capture the humanity of the road systems. There's so much more invested beyond the cloverleaf pattern in this 4-deck, 3-lane highway. In fact, our 47,000-mile wide nationwide road system determines the way we live, where we live, how we move, how goods get to us. Roads are vital to our lives. One is stuck without them. And we've proverbially come a long way, baby, in a very relatively short time. So as our journey continues, I want to take this opportunity to widen the perspective of history. This great land, America, was once an ocean of forest, undulating waves of swaying old growth forest canopy. Most of the continental United States were vast tracts of leaf-strewn forest land, ancient primitive wood, verdant due to the snowfall of innumerable years. And the Native Americans were great stewards of this land. Those forest tracks eventually were trodden more and more by the hobnailed sturdy shoes of the pilgrims. Those ponderous shoes left a distinctness on this sacred ground, which it never acquired from the light tread of 100 times as many Indian moccasins. The human interest in the form of an axe plunged the woods into open sunshine. And we continue to, as laments the song, pave paradise to put up parking lots all over the US and worldwide. Even now, the heavy tread of human greed is paving its way into sacred, pristine lands throughout our globe. Let these mud paths signal our return to our story of American roads. Because a little over 100 years ago, around 1900s, most roads in America were effectively cattle wallows sinking in mud. Spats, as shown on the foot of Rudolph Valentino, were a necessity to protect shoes from mud. Shoe shine boys were more a need to have than a nice to have. And newspapers of the early 1900s bewailed the travesty of the American roads. For those who are familiar with Chicago's Streeterville areas, here's a little ditty from around 1904 to St. Clair Street, right by today's Arts Club and the Capitol Grill restaurant. And it's quite catchy. It goes, there's a street they call St. Clair. It would make the angels swear. Rocky as the road to Dublin town, bumps and mud holes everywhere. Oh, the cuss words in the air. It has a nice little jolly ring of Where's Waldo, but much more funny. So the Tribune ran a series of poems lamenting the deplorable condition of the city's streets. Full of mud and full of holes, streets that vex all kinds of souls. And the soul here is spelled both S-O-L-E-S and S-O-U-L-S. So driving in the early 20th century, especially within interstates, involved as much digging as driving, because one would have to change tires frequently as they'd get stuck in the mud. So to drive from New York to Chicago then was a 3-month affair. Today it takes about 12 hours, thanks to paved roads. So business decried the mud-spattered affair, and one major impetus for our transcontinental highway system was the need to move goods by trucks. After World War I, a more efficient system was needed to disperse the railroad goods from the East Coast. It was also a military objective after World War I to move supplies from manufacturing sites to ports. Here's an event that seeded fruit later. So in 1919, then Lieutenant Colonel Dwight Eisenhower had worked on an Army motor convoy from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco. It became a 62-day ordeal because the convoy of Army trucks had bogged down in the Utah desert. The trucks had to be roped and pulled out by hand. Hundreds of bridges were smashed. Eisenhower had realized the need for a national highway. And so this episode cemented his support for financing the federal infrastructure bill when he became president almost 30 years later. In the meantime, in the 1920s, way before Eisenhower became president, these times witnessed an influx of cars, but the road system in America was wholly unprepared for them. States were the primary road builders, and so the federal government had to get involved to create a cohesive nationwide system. And this man, Thomas McDonald, is responsible for laying the groundwork for the taxpayer-funded Public Works Project, which is our road system. It was under his administration that the numerical system of naming highways was implemented. So even today, even-numbered highways run east-west. For example, I-80, it's running east-west. Odd numbers highways, such as the Highway 75, which goes from Texas north, Oklahoma into St. Louis, that is running north and south. So along with roads came the advent of street lights, street signs, electricity got involved. Cars used to topple over, killing children yearly. And so road medians were involved and introduced to address this issue. One can imagine many other social connections, policies, the rules and regulations that were causes and effects of paved roads. It's slightly more complex is the fact that the national highways, when planned, sometimes ran through established communities, through established neighborhoods, clearing churches and cemeteries. The off-ramp sections by interstate highways were and remain overrun, have you noticed, by national chains. One hardly sees mom and pop stores like the one shown here because they cannot afford the higher real estate prices. Highways were designed mainly for efficiency. And so these highways, while very astutely getting people from point A to point B, entirely loses the soul of the place, of the country, of the human connectivity to the land. However, that efficiency has great financial value. The efficiency of our road system allows us to walk into a grocery store and buy strawberries year round. The ease of access to consumer goods that the national roadway provides is why almost all materials are equally priced across states, more or less barring state and local taxes. Yet there are ironies galore. The highway is maintained by the gasoline tax. As we continue to buy more and more fuel-efficient cars, the money available for maintenance is affected. The highway trust that is funded by the gasoline tax is oddly penalized by fuel efficiency standards. And this policy needs to be addressed very soon, because all of this is very relevant as our government looks into finally addressing the country's crumbling infrastructure. It is the paved road, the highway, that allows, actually encourages what is known as urban sprawl, suburbia. Our vast network of highways, road systems, enable people to live 40 miles away from where they work, 40 or more miles away. And urban sprawl is not limited to the United States. Urban sprawl in Europe. This is not the world of cobblestone pathways we imagine and romanticize about Europe. In fact, that radio emitting telegraph tower on the top left is a giveaway about which picture is being shown. We are in Paris, France, and that city did not look like this always. It used to be a rabbit's ren with unhygienic, dark alleys. Just read a line from Victor Hugo's novel from the perspective of infrastructure. I'm going to read a line to you, quotes. The narrow, uneven, sinuous streets, full of turns and corners, were admirably chosen. The environs of the markets, in particularly, there were a network of streets that were more intricate than forest, close quotes. Because after the French Revolution, the land previously held by the Catholic Church was ceded to the French Republic to pay off government debt. Religious statues, including those inside Notre Dame, were sold to finance the war. By the time Napoleon and his nephew were elected, France had had a smattering of violent revolts. So consequently, Paris was a constant battleground, and the original city's medieval narrow maze proved advantageous to the rebels for their guerrilla warfare. When Napoleon III came into power, he ordered wide boulevards to replace the old networks of dark cobbled pathways that had aided the rebels. So in 1852, the Paris prefect, Baron Haussmann, who had no background in architecture, tore down 19,000 buildings. Among other things, he created 85 miles of new tree-lined boulevards, which is such a signature of Paris now. Referring to himself as the artist demolitionist, he justified tearing down most of old central Paris with the simple metaphor, and I'm quoting, "It is easier to cut through the center of a pie than through the crust." It is rather an effective description. And it is his Paris that we enjoy. There is a highway called the Periphery a ring road that encircles all of Paris proper. And the geographic delineation is also financially revealing. These boundaries are evident. I'm going to point circle even from the sky. And they reveal a lot of things once you start removing the layers. But what is true for Paris is true for urban reconstruction worldwide. And I had included this section on Paris as a caution for the juggernaut that has already started. The massive, multinational, multi-billion-dollar infrastructure project, China's Belt and Road Initiative. The administration for this mega project is centered around here in Xi'an. And the choice of the city is symbolic because Xi'an used to be vital to the old Silk Roads. This massive project includes numerous road constructions. Roads that are running through the Himalayan ranges, carrying Chinese goods to other parts of the world. It's going to go throughout Asia into Europe and beyond. And for perspective, I'm going to use Ethiopia to illustrate a point. In the Afar region, traditional camel tracks have been used by salt miners for centuries. Imagine the cultural customs, the languages, the food habits, the living experiences associated with this way of life that will be permanently removed once that asphalt highway on the bottom of the picture is completed. This is true when new roads are constructed in unexplored spaces anywhere in the world, be it in Asia, be it in Africa or South America. And not just that this affects the lives of the people. Will there be a need for these camels when these highways are there? What will happen to all these camels? It isn't always that bridges are so thoughtfully designed to allow transportation of all life forms, but it matters deeply. How do these creatures get to food on the other side when they have vehicles traveling 80 to 90 miles per hour, separating them from their prey, from their food? The paths we pave need to be welcoming, to be safe for all. Who considers them in these construction mega projects if cost efficiency and expediency are the sole determinants? You know, the much abused term sanctity of life. Whose life? As our road trip, this journey nears an end, I'm reminded of a poem by the Indian Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore. I'm going to read a poem of his to you. One day, this precious gift of life will cease. My last blink will forever seal my eyes. The following day will dawn the same as this. The world will wake to see the same sunrise. The noisy play of the world will carry on, and in homes, the time will gladly, sadly pass. Thinking of this, towards this world I turn and look at it with newfound eagerness. And simple things that didn't seem to count all now take on a value beyond price. Places or lives of which the least amount of note was taken will now more than suffice. Away with all I've got or didn't get. Give me what's humble, things that I forget. If you like presentations like this, there is one coming up next week. It's actually being hosted by IWA, the International Women Associations. It is a presentation on India titled An Idea Across Centuries, because it's hosted by a different organization. If you wish to attend it, it is open to you at no cost, but you do need to send an email at this address and they will send you a registration, once again for free. Then on the Nourishment Project's own website, again, 2 weeks from now, we continue the influencer series. This is hosted by the Women's Athletic Club. This time, last time it was the Spanish Empire, now it's the Dutch Empire. And I'm very excited to share with you a new series that's going to be starting in the fall of this year, being hosted by the International House of the University of Chicago. And it's really mainly for non-musical people like me, those who are not familiar with opera, but love it so, because it's such a collaboration of art form. It's called Opera and Inclusion. The collaborators are the Joffrey Ballet, the Oriental Institute, the Newberry, and also Chester Beatty. And it's going to be a 5-month presentation, 1 presentations a month. The dates are provided. More information will be up on the website. And it's going to approach opera through the prisms of war and politics, love and lust, movies, architecture and botany, and religion. Because all of these ideas undergird opera, because operas tell a story. If it was just merely music, it would have been a symphony. I hope you consider attending these. It is included for free for all Nourishment Project members. Any presentations I do are always open to members. I hope you like it, because I'm having great fun putting this together. That's it for today. I am, as always, so grateful that you spend time to attend these and share your time with us. I'm going to stop sharing and welcome your feedback.